right, everybody, you have just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast, presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And we have reached the fourth and final week of the preseason. Thank the good Lord that we've made it, because my goodness, preseason football is awful, but it's a necessary evil, boys and girls. And we're almost through it, as the Steelers will play in Carolina tomorrow night, Thursday night, against the Panthers, and we'll get into that. But what we want to do is start giving you our projections for the 53-man roster that will be coming on August 31st by 4 p.m. And some teams, as you've seen, have already gotten a jump on it a little bit. The Dolphins have been doing some things, and a few others. But with me tonight to discuss all things Steelers related is Ben on one coast. And coming to you from the Steel City is Ian. Ian, how are things there in beautiful Pittsburgh, PA?
It's been beautiful. It's been like fall weather here all week long. It's been awesome. High school football kicked off last week. I'm going to a game Friday night. It's going to be great.
And real quick, Ian and one of our new guys, Brentaro, doing some awesome job with Whippeal for all you high school football fans there in Western PA. So make sure you're checking that coverage out at steelcityblitz.com too. And Ben, are you okay out there? Was it 97 degrees yesterday?
Yeah, it was 97 today too.
97, and of course that's no humidity, right?
Nope.
My goodness.
No humidity. Nice. I mean, low humidity. It's like 20% humidity.
Sure,
you can't even notice it.
That's terrific. And I don't know. I love summer, but I'm always excited for fall as well. And it is definitely, as Ian said, here in the East, it is definitely starting to feel a little bit more like football weather. And of course, I just jinxed it. It'll probably be 95 for opening weekend of the NFL. Anyway, guys, let's just jump right into this. That's what the people are here to listen to. Let's start on offense. Let's start with the quarterbacks. This has been kind of a unique season because, we've had the backup kind of fighting for his position against the up-and-comer. And then, of course, you've got this camp arm who's come in and done a very nice job. So, Ian, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger, he is what he is. We'll just set him aside. And where are you right now when it comes to Mason Rudolph and Josh Dobbs?
I mean, I think barring a trade, they're both absolutely going to make the roster. I don't see any way that they don't both make the roster at this point in time, unless one of them gets traded. I think Rudolph is your number 2. I think he's proven not only he can get a team in and out of a huddle, but he can get them up and down the field with his arm. He's missed some throws, granted, but so has Dobbs. Dobbs, my biggest complaint with him, even going back to college, it's why he, dropped to the third day in the draft. He has no touch on any of his throws. If he can stand back there and sling it downfield, he can make good throws. But he has no touch throws, which, the last preseason game when I was sitting there, or actually it might have been the Kansas City game, I was sitting there watching it, and Dobbs threw a great ball to get the Steelers down inside the 5-yard line. I was kind of like, well, if they pass here, they're screwed, because he can't put touch on a pass like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and he threw an interception on the next play. So Dobbs kind of is what he is, but at the same time, he does give you that ability that he can scramble out and run with the ball and pick up some big yards, and convert long third downs that way. So, and if Ben and Rudolph were to both go down, then obviously the line is probably having some issues too. So you may need someone back there who can scramble around a little bit. I don't think there's any way the Steelers keep only 2 quarterbacks. I think all 3 are pretty much definitely making the roster, and Rudolph's going to be the number 2.
Yeah, I'm tending to lean that way as well. Ben, obviously, I'll get yours too. But the other question I'm going to ask you is: has Dobbs reached a ceiling now? I mean, is he at a point where he's really not going to improve much as an NFL quarterback?
Probably not. He's still a young player. He can still improve. He can improve his decision making. He can improve his anticipation, when he throws. So it's not like he's not going to improve from here. I don't think he's likely to improve is his accuracy. And his accuracy, frankly, is not very good. And it doesn't matter. I mean, Ian thinks that he's a pretty good passer if he can throw the ball long. I do not think he's a good passer when he throws the ball long. He underthrows people. He overthrows people. He overthrew a 6'8" guy last week.
He did.
How do you overthrow a guy who's 6'8"? I do not understand the fascination with Dobbs as a quarterback, to be perfectly frank. He can move real well in the pocket. He's obviously a smart guy. He's a high character guy. Definitely. He's super likable, but that doesn't make him a great quarterback. Right. So and his short and intermediate passes are absolutely horrible. I mean, they're terrible. What NFL quarterback can't throw an intermediate crosser? I mean, that should be an elementary pass that everybody can hit, and Josh Dobbs can't do it. That's where he throws picks. I don't get it. I'm not saying the guy sucks. I still think he's going to beat out Hodges, which I don't,
Yeah.
You want to keep Hodges around, but you look at the quality of the players and you just go, well, sorry, Devlin, there's not room for you. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're going to keep a fourth quarterback on the practice squad either. I know a lot of people do because he's a quality player, yada, yada, yada. But there are only so many reps during a practice in an NFL season. And it's because of the CBA, the way it's written out, the limitations those guys have. The starter gets most of the reps. The third team guy right now doesn't get hardly any reps. And a fourth team guy, he's not going to get any. He's going to stand around. So why keep a quarterback that you can't work with? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and there's a big difference too, and somebody said this to me, and I was trying to clarify it. Getting reps as a quarterback, when we say that, we're talking about actually lining up, running plays, things like that. I mean, guys can go out and work with receivers anytime they want to at the facility. I mean, that's fine, but that's not getting reps per se.
That's also not getting coaching.
Well, that too. I mean, it's a number 4 guy, a number 3 guy, they can throw as many balls as they want to. But yeah, you're right. You're not getting the coaching and you're not really getting any true realistic reps. So I tend to agree. I don't see any way they keep 4. Dobbs definitely gives you more of a security blanket than Hodges, I think, although still to this day, every time Dobbs gets ready to throw the ball, I cringe, just because of what both of you guys said as far as the accuracy stuff. But I will agree and go with those 3, obviously Ben and Rudolph, and then Dobbs probably not getting a helmet on game day. Running backs. Ian, do we stay with the typical Mike Tomlin pattern here? Go 3 running backs and a fullback? And if so, who do you got?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I do think the distribution of work may be a little bit different this year, but it's going to be James Conner, Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, and then Roosevelt Nix. I think they do want to somewhat limit Conner's carries. I mean, he's still going to be the feature back. Sure. But I think they want to work Samuels and Snell both into the lineup a little bit more. I think Snell will get some more of the short yardage carries, and Samuels will get some more of the third down work as long as his blocking improves. Actually, throughout the preseason, we all knew that Benny Snell could run the ball based on what he did through a tough SEC schedule at Kentucky. But I've actually thought his running has been sort of the least impressive part of his game. I've been most impressed with actually his receiving abilities, his ability to pick up blitzers, which is huge for young running backs. That not all those guys have that sort of tenacity to do that, or the ability to actually stay in there with blitzing linebackers or blitzing corners and safeties. And Snell's shown that he can do that. So he seems like he's got the little parts of his game. He's also shown up very well on special teams, getting downfield and making tackles. So, special teams, picking up blitzers and, catching a couple balls out of the backfield have been what jumped out to me the most. But he also hasn't been able to run behind the first string offensive line. So that also may make a bit of a difference, when he's able to do that. But I think, throughout the season, if they're able to preserve James Conner a little bit, keep him healthy so he's not, getting 30 touches a game. And touches is the key here, because it's not just, rushes. It's rushes plus receptions, because you're getting hit all the time. And, actually receptions, sometimes you're standing still and getting hit instead of, running forward into into a hit where you can control your body a little bit more, you're getting hit from behind. So, but yeah, I think all four of them make the team, and they're all going to get a variety of work this season.
Yeah, and I think they've been also, obviously we know about Nix's prowess on special teams, but Snell has made some really nice plays on special teams too, and we know Jalen Samuels can as well. Ben, I'm going to assume you're going to go in that same direction there at running back.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cut and dried. It's those three, and that is what it is. And I don't necessarily believe that they are going in with a hard and fast plan at running back. I think there are some things they want to do with Samuels as I don't want to use the term scat back, but as a pass catching back, as a back who runs outside the tackles more so than a guy who runs between them. I agree with Ian. Benny Snell will probably get more duty both in short yardage and late in games as a closer. And, they'll do what they've always done, though, in so much as I think they'll stick with a hot hand. If Samuels goes in and he's having a great game, they're going to leave him in. They're just going to keep riding him. That's what Tomlin does. Right. If Connor's having a great game, they're not going to pull him. They don't do that until the guy says, "Hey, I need a blow." So I don't necessarily think they're going to have a hard and fast plan at running back to have a structured set of a pitch count,
Yeah, nothing in concrete.
Yeah. I don't see a pitch count being part of the game plan on a weekly basis. I think they're going to go in and they're going to go, well, we'll run these and whoever the hot hand is, that's who we're going to roll with until we decide to change the direction a little bit.
Ben, real quick, do you think that
I generally agree with that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I was just going to say the only thing I think that may be a little different this year is that we may actually see some, I'll call it pony backfield with both Connor and Samuels on the field at the same time, because then you have two guys that you could potentially move either one of them to the slot if you needed to, or, run the ball with either one of them as well.
I think
if exactly where I was going.
If they're trying to sell a run play and they've got a pony backfield, they're not going to move Connor into the slot because unless they're spread out, if they're spread along the offensive line and along the formation, then they'll do it. But you're not trying to sell Samuels as a guy who's going to carry the ball between the tackles because he's not good at it. If he does do that, it's going to be off tackle and it's going to be on a counter where he's got a lead blocker or two in front of him, and all he's got to do is get a one-on-one versus like a safety or a cornerback. And they do that, and they've executed it quite well so far in the preseason. I'd like to see him do it in the regular season too. So, I'm looking forward to it. I think there are going to be some interesting things this year. I don't think this offense is in trouble, which a lot of people, especially Browns fans, seem to relish the thought that this offense is in big trouble. Oh my God. And then some Steelers fans believe it too, which I don't get. Newsflash, Le'Veon Bell didn't play for the Steelers last season. His loss means nothing at this point. Antonio Brown, that definitely is a loss. But from a depth standpoint, the wide receiver room is better this year than it was last. But we'll get to all that.
Yeah, we definitely will. Ian, speaking
it's a good segue.
Perfect segue of the I was doing my best to screw it up too. The wide receiver room. Look, we know Juju's there, Dante Moncrief, and who else fills in there? And I'm gonna assume that you're gonna go with 6 wide receivers.
So I'm actually going to start with 5. Juju, Moncrief, James Washington, Deontay Johnson are absolute locks. I think considering that Ryan Switzer saw pretty much all the first team kick returns in the 3rd preseason game, he's more or less a lock to make the team as well. So those 5 I am essentially certain of that they're going to make the team. Eli Rogers, I think he makes the team, but I'm not 100% certain that it's him. Right. Johnny Holton and Deontay Spencer have both shown flashes in the preseason. Granted, neither of them have actually, gotten the level of work with the starters. They've primarily been out there against backups. We all remember how good guys like Dre Archer and Chris Rainey looked in the preseason when they were playing against backups and then couldn't do anything against starters. So, I kind of try and take those guys with a grain of salt. I think Eli Rogers has the advantage of having that rapport with Ben, having that knowledge of the offense and how it works. So if they keep 6 wide receivers, I think Eli Rogers is the guy. But I'm not 100% sold that they're going to keep 6 wide receivers, and we can get into that a little bit more later.
Yeah,
I am.
Well, then get into it now, Ben.
I look at their depth at receiver overall, and I'm talking about the tight ends and the receivers. The tight end group is not good. It just isn't. No. And past Vance McDonald, they stink. So you're going to run a lot of multiple wide receiver sets. You're going to need to have depth in that group. I think they keep 6. I would prefer a different type, a different build of wide receiver than Rodgers, but right now, looking at that group, Rodgers is the 6th wide receiver. He might even be 5th. And I'm not going to get into the whole – there seems to be this battle on Twitter over who's better, Switzer or Rodgers. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, seriously. You guys are spending time arguing about who's better, the 5th or 6th wide receiver. Who cares? Neither one of them are going to see a lot of snaps on offense. Newsflash.
It's like battling over who's the better bullpen catcher. Yeah, I mean,
it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other.
Excellent. Yes. I agree, Ian, that when Switzer was back on both kick and punt returns last week, that solidified it for me. And Eli Rogers, he's had his moments in the so-called Tomlin doghouse. He's had some positive moments. But I think that's where he's going. I think he's going to be in that 6th spot. Holton is an interesting guy. Deontay Spencer has looked good at times returning punts, but his receiving has been
sucks.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
So that's why I'm leaning towards Rodgers as well.
Greg Griffey has done some nice things during the preseason, but I don't see him. I don't see him pushing Rodgers out. I'd like to see a guy, like I said, with a different build. I'd like to see a guy who could play outside, be that 6th wide receiver. But it just doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, and that's what I'm resigned to. Same way, Ian.
I was just going to say, Tevin Jones kind of came in with a lot of hype at the start of the preseason and training camp, but he really hasn't done a whole lot during actual preseason games so far.
No, and we got another great.
And he is a guy that has a bit of a different build.
He does. Let's get into that tight end situation here. Ian and Vance McDonald will be your starter. Xavier Grimble, almost by default, is your number 2. And, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN today, he said that Zach Gentry is going to get that 3rd spot just almost by super default, if you will. What do you got? What do you think of the tight ends?
Saying that Xavier Grimble is number 2 is kind of fitting because he is a pile of crap. But I think I agree with your lead there, given the current players we have on the roster. No one else has shown up very well. Kevin Rader was a guy who generated some buzz in training camp, but his preseason has been marred by a fumble, took 3 or 4 holding penalties. So he just hasn't shown up in the games in the way that you want him to show up in the game. So Gentry caught 1 touchdown pass. His really sole value is being tall, but I don't know what to say at this position. The best option, honestly, is to go find 2 tight ends on waivers or trades. But I don't think they're going to do that. At least one, yeah. I don't think they're going to do that, though. So I think, like you said, Grimble kind of makes the team by default, especially since they signed him to a contract extension in the offseason. I know it was just a 1-year deal, but it was still a contract. And the team generally does honor those players that they sign in the offseason, which when we get into defense, we'll talk about Dan McCullers in the same way. So I think Grimble does make the team. Gentry there's been no one better than him on the roster right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the guy in New England. He may make the 53-man roster, and then they may pick someone up on waivers the next day and shuffle him off to the practice squad, which would probably be the ideal spot for him. So I think that's entirely possible that Gentry makes the 53 but is not on the roster when we go to New England.
And Ben, I know you want to jump in here. We've talked numerous times on the show about the fact that we feel they definitely need to go and get somebody here in the next few days as cuts start happening. But we also have this feeling like it's not going to happen. And it's just really troubling to even have that feeling. Ben, go ahead. What's your take on the tight ends?
I don't agree that no one has outplayed Zach Gentry. Zach Gentry hasn't done anything that's impressed me other than running around one play on a scramble drill and catching a touchdown pass. And great. You're a tall guy and you actually caught it. Mm-hmm. Your hands are suspect. You can't block. I agree. Kevin Rader, has the first game versus the Bucs. I thought he clearly outplayed Gentry.
Yeah.
Since then, he hasn't done anything. He's done nothing to impress me, and he has had the fumble. Being fair to Xavier Grimble, he did have one really nice block in pass protection, coming across the backfield and picking up a defensive lineman that had beaten Al, and he had a really nice pass block pickup. So I will give him that. And he's had a drop, and he's had a couple of nice catches, but, nothing really outstanding. But, he looks okay-ish. But, what they really need to do is sign one of the guys that Indy cuts if they cut him.
Yeah.
In all likelihood, I think what Indy's going to try and do is this week is, say, Friday, they're going to try and trade one of their tight ends and get something to build their team up. I mean, they need a quarterback now, so they probably need to try and get as much draft capital as they possibly can.
That's a good point.
I don't know, man. I'm not optimistic about that, and I'm really, really hopeful that McDonald can stay healthy. I'd be surprised if they ran a lot of pass plays out of double tights this year, and that seemed to be something they liked doing last year. So.
Yeah. I mean, they're just the personnel's just not there to do it.
No.
Which goes back to your point about keeping 6 wide receivers, because there's going to be a lot of wide receivers on the field at any given time. The final position on offense that we need to talk about is the offensive line. And
can I jump in one quick thing?
Yes.
The one thing I will mention with Indianapolis trading a tight end, I mean, their top 2 guys both have $5 million base salaries. So Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle are both at $5 million bases, and we have about 4 and change in cap space right now. So it's, getting one of those guys. I've seen, Jack Doyle's name floated out there a lot on Twitter and some other crazy trade ideas, but we're tight up against it on the cap right now. I mean, we pretty much have to pick up someone on waivers.
Yeah, they'd have to,
sign someone.
Yeah, I think they could trade for someone. They'd have to do a restructure, and I'd have to look at the cap to give you candidates for it. But it can be done. They can make as much room as they want to. They just don't want to. They're not inclined to, and I get that too. So I'm not going to criticize them about that, but I don't see Doyle getting traded, and I don't see Eric Ebron getting traded. It'll be their 5th tight end that they trade off to somebody for a 6th or 7th round draft pick.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I know I've seen Steelers fans talking about Jake Butt possibly from Denver. He's having yet another knee operation. It's like his 3rd, I think, in the last 14 months. I mean,
poor guy.
Yeah, horrible luck for that young man. But let's talk offensive linemen, and obviously the starting offensive line is pretty set. I think we all agree. You've got Al, DeCastro, Pouncey, Foster, and of course Matt Filer holding down that right tackle spot. Ian, who fills in from there? Because it's a very intriguing situation when you look at the potential guys that could be there in terms of who has center experience and who doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think Okorafor and Finney are most definitely making the team. Okorafor is going to be your swing tackle. He'll be your top backup at both spots. Finney's your top interior backup. Beyond that, it really gets into a question of coaching, because Mike Munchak was always able to convince them to keep 9 offensive linemen. Is Sean Surratt able to convince them to keep 9 offensive linemen when most other teams keep 8? They traditionally only dress 8 for game day, sometimes only 7 for game day anyways. Yeah. So, is it worth having 9 offensive linemen if 2 of them aren't even going to dress for game day? That's a question they're going to have to answer moving forward. So I think those 7, the 5 you named, plus Okorafor and Finney, are definitely making the team. And then 1 or 2 other guys, I can't say for certain. I'll say they're definitely going to keep 8. I don't know if they're going to keep 9. And the sort of next tier of guys is probably Gerald Hawkins, Fred Johnson, and Zach Banner. And then Derwin Gray, who they drafted at the end of the draft this year, he hasn't really shown a whole lot. He seems destined for the practice squad. Gerald Hawkins has had an injury-riddled Steelers career. This has really been the, only time he's actually been able to be on the football field for more than a game. But Fred Johnson's played really well. So, and Zach Banner was a guy that seems like they liked. They carried him on their roster last year. So I really don't know which one of those 3 they'll take if they only keep 8. They'll probably want someone who can play both a guard or a tackle spot. But I can't say for certain which one it'll be.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Ben, are they gonna keep 9?
I think they will.
Yeah,
I think they'll keep 9 again because they've gotten good results out of keeping 9 and developing, not just practice squad level players, but guys that can make NFL rosters. Mm-hmm. And the results kind of speak for themselves. The philosophy speaks for itself. So I think they'll continue doing so. There's no reason to change it. It ain't broke. Don't fix it.
Yep.
One of those deals. At some point during the season, if they need an extra roster spot, then yeah, maybe they'll make a switch. They'll make a change. But right out of the gate, no, I think they'll keep 9. And I think the 9th offensive lineman will be Fred Johnson and Zach Banner. Hawkins hasn't done much to impress me, which really sucks. It's really disappointing because they really saw him. Yep. Well, they saw him as a future left tackle, and they really thought he had a promising future. And I don't know if he's practice squad eligible, to be honest. At this point, he might be, he might not. And Derwin Gray looks to be a guy
every year on IR.
Yeah, Derwin. Well, 2 years. 2 years. Last year he was. The year before he was 16 games on the roster. Derwin Gray looks to be a guy that can develop into a guard. He did some nice things. Mm-hmm. And he just looks like he's just stronger than get out. I mean, he looks like it anyway.
Yeah.
I think he's technically he's not very sound yet, so he's going to need some work. And then Patrick Morris is still that athletic center that they like, but he just isn't quite there yet. He's not quite a guy that is going to make the roster. So I think he's on the practice squad. And my question really is whether or not they keep 2 or 3 offensive linemen on the practice squad, which every year for the last 5, they've kept 9 offensive linemen and 2 on the practice squad. So it's a big group.
It is. And it's been a very intriguing group to watch just because of those, the Fred Johnson, the Zach Banner, who's improved, lost all that weight. So, again, you're listening to the Steel City Blitz podcast presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And Ian, let's flip it over to the defense here. Defensive line, this isn't going to require a whole lot of conversation here, is it?
Yeah.
maybe a little.
Okay.
The top 4 are set in stone. It's Hayward, Hargrave, Tuitt, and Alualu. After that, like we mentioned with Xavier Grimble, Dan McCullers, they signed to an extension or re-signed to a new contract this year. So he's probably the 5th defensive lineman, even though he doesn't really do a whole lot. Isaiah Buggs was a late round pick. Mondu's actually shown some flashes. So they'll probably keep one of those guys on the practice squad. They traditionally have kept 6 defensive linemen. And I know something that we've talked a lot about is kind of depending on the health of the outside linebacker situation, do they keep an extra outside linebacker at the beginning of the year at the expense of potentially a 6th defensive lineman, which is something we can get into here. But I mean, I think that the top 5 are pretty well set, and I really would be shocked if Dan McCullers doesn't make the roster, even though he hasn't done a whole lot either.
I listened to the game in transit on Sunday, and Tunch and Wolf and Bill Hillgrove and stuff, and they just loved what Dan McCullers was doing on Sunday night. And when I sat down and actually watched it, I was kind of like, okay, all right, he looks like he's got a little more, giddy up in his step, but I still just am not seeing the things that they hoped I think he was going to potentially be.
He gets in the way too often. He gets in the way far too often. He's a guy who doesn't move down the line, and he keeps the guys that are pursuing from his right or left getting to where they need to be. So it's, I don't know. He's so immobile. That's my issue with Dan. As far as taking up space and difficult to run through, sure, that's true. He is. But that's it. He's a nose tackle only, and he's a nose tackle on a team that runs its base 34 28% of the time last year, and that number's falling.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a lot of value. Doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of value except for, in short yardage situations and in the base defense. But yeah, I agree with Ian. I think he makes the team. I don't see anybody who's outplayed him to this point. And, Buggs looks to me like he might make the team. But if I'm doing cuts and I look at the fact that Anthony Chickillo and Ola Adenyi are both injured, I'm concerned about my depth at outside linebacker. I'm keeping an extra outside linebacker and Tuzar Skipper at least for a few weeks, and I'm cutting a defensive lineman. And that guy is likely Isaiah Buggs. So I think, and I'm just, this is just an educated guess, really.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go in with 5 defensive linemen this year, at least to start the season. And they'll keep an extra one on the practice squad.
Buggs reminds me of a guy that should start the year on the practice squad, but because of just the way things are falling, he might actually make the roster. But, and that leads us into the linebackers with, as you said, Chick is hurt, and so is Ola. I'm in agreement, and Ian, I'll throw this over to you. I think Tuzar Skipper has to get on this roster at least for a few weeks, doesn't he?
I agree. I mean, he's shown up every time he's been on the field. And I know that Tomlin tried to downplay it a little bit the first week, saying, he made all his plays between the 81st and 90th snap of the game. So we'll see how he does against stiffer competition. But I mean, every time he's been on the field, he's making plays. So and like Ben mentioned with the injuries, I really think that, you could potentially only go into New England with 2 healthy outside linebackers in Watt and Dupree if Chickillo and Ola are both injured. I think you have to keep Tuzar Skipper on the roster to head to New England, just to have a third healthy body there.
Don't forget, too, that Dupree now has a banged-up thumb. So, he says he's fine. He's going to play.
They'll wrap that up. They'll wrap that up and he'll play. But
they will.
Ola will definitely be out the first couple of weeks of the season. And Chick, who knows? He's got this mystery chest injury that, Tomlin doesn't have to be specific about. So we have no idea. We can only speculate as to the severity of it and when he'll be back. Because every time Tomlin's asked about it, he says, he's day to day. Next.
I think Chick, his chest injury comes from all those bodybuilding poses he does when he sticks his tongue out in the locker room. I wonder if that's when that happened. But anyway, I digress. Where else are we looking at the linebackers? We know Watt.
Inside.
We know Dupree. So you got to go inside. Barron, Bush, Williams. Oh, boy. I mean,
Matakevich
is the Danny Smith golden boy, right, Ian?
Yeah, he is.
Not only that, I mean, Matakevich has made a few plays on defense in the preseason too. I mean, I think he's been around long enough, and you're right, he is the special teams golden boy now, that he makes the team based on special teams ability alone. And I think you have to keep Ulysses Gilbert. I mean, Gilbert's done enough in the preseason that to justify his draft pick. I know that was one that we all kind of questioned at the time it was made. Like, why did they trade up for Devin Bush and then spend another late round pick on an inside linebacker? But Gilbert's shown up on the field and shown why, he was deserving of a draft pick. So I think he's making the roster too.
Sorry, are you looking at 10, Ian?
I am. Yeah, I think you got to keep 10. And I know that's traditionally not what the Steelers do, but I think because of the injuries on the outside, they don't really have a swing guy this year, like an Arthur Moats that could play inside or outside if they need to. So I think you're in a position where you have to keep 10 just because, you need Skipper to have 3 healthy bodies in New England on the outside.
Yeah. Ben, they gonna go with 10 or stay at 9?
No, I think 10. That's what I've been saying for a little bit over a week, and what happened this last week didn't change my thoughts on that at all. The Titans game where you knew Wello was going to be out and speculated that Chicolo would be out, and then he comes out in street clothes, and it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I pretty much thought at that point if Skipper had a good game and he showed out again, that if he had a good game that he would make the roster, and I still feel that way. And it's both. He's done some good things on the field, and they really need that extra body.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sold on 10. I think that's where they have to go due to the injuries. These are also guys that can obviously play on special teams as well. So I like that, and I think that's what I'm going to stick with too. Secondary, Joe Hayden, okay, write it in. Steve Nelson, Mike Hilton, Sean Davis, Terrell Edmonds. Where else, Ian? Who else is back there?
Artie Burns is making the team. He was the starting gunner on the special teams unit, so I don't see any way that Artie doesn't make it. Justin Lane probably makes it just because of the draft capital that they invested in him.
Sure.
I think Craig Urbick in 2009 was the last time a third-round pick didn't make the team, and they had 3 third-round picks that year. Then it leaves Cam Sutton. Edmonds is making the team. Cam Kelly at safety is definitely making the team too. So that's 9 guys right there. The one question I wanted to throw out there is, do you think they're definitely keeping 4 safeties, so it's probably going to be Dangerfield over Marcus Allen. Do you think there's any way that Mike Hilton doesn't make this team?
Whew, Ben, I'll let you tackle that one.
No.
I agree.
No, I don't think so. And it's just because they don't have enough depth at that nickelback position. I won't be shocked if Hilton's not the starter opening week. That won't shock me at all. He's had a few boneheaded plays where he's gotten caught peeking into the backfield, not paying attention to where the receiver is, and giving up long plays, giving up touchdowns. But they just don't have the guys there. They don't have the horses to be able to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut a Mike Hilton, who's played well in the past. Artie Burns, I agree. He's definitely going to make the team. He's played pretty well in the preseason. He's already been advanced over half of his total compensation. No, I'm sorry, about half his total compensation for this year. They're not just going to walk away from that money. Cam Sutton's played well. Marcus Allen hasn't. Jordan Dangerfield's played okay. Cam Kelly has played pretty respectably at free safety, and I think he's got it. The other thing
about Kelly I'll mention is that, Kelly after Sean Davis went down, Kelly was playing first team reps the whole time, and they really didn't shuttle anyone else in and give anyone else first team reps. So, it's pretty much been that Kelly was the number 3 safety throughout all of training camp.
Lane has looked, I don't know, not good. He looks okay in bump when he can keep his hands on the receiver, when he can keep him in front of him, keep track of him, he looks fine. He looks really bad in off-man coverage and in zone. So he's going to have to learn to do that. So my feeling is he's probably going to be a bottom of the depth chart cornerback this season. The guy I'm really disappointed in is P.J. Locke. I really thought that he would come in and he would do some things. And the couple times that I thought I saw him make a play on special teams, it was Benny Snell.
Yes. I made that mistake once
myself. I was like, oh, it's Locke. No, it's not. It's Snell. Never mind.
Yeah, that's funny you mention him. I expected more out of him, too. I really liked his tape from the aspect of a guy that was just going to pound the crap out of you, downhill. I didn't expect anything from him in terms of being able to cover anybody, but I definitely thought we'd hear more of him. Yeah.
He and Askew Henry, you really thought one of them was going to make it as a fifth safety and a special teams demon. And neither one of them has impressed at all. And Marcus Allen looks worse this year than he did last. And, he's bulked up. He's bigger. But his play is not good. So
he's got to be headed to the practice squad, right?
Marcus Allen? Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if he doesn't just get outright cut, to be perfectly
personally,
honest.
That's what I do with him, but I don't think they will. I think they'll put him on the practice squad. But
the guy who's made him superfluous really is Mark Barron, because Mark Barron has got versatility in as much as he can play dime backer, he can play strong safety in a pinch, and he can play linebacker. And when you've got a guy who can do all of that, it makes it, a problem to keep an extra guy who really is a box safety / dime backer only, and he's not a good dime backer. Marcus Allen is who I'm speaking to. Right. He's not even good at that. He's terrible in coverage. So I don't know if I even keep him. And if I do keep him, I tell him to cut weight, and we need to work on his quickness because the weight he's put on has hurt his play.
Yeah, I agree with you. I saw it in that first or second preseason game when he was forced to cover guys going across the middle and he couldn't keep up. And so I'm with you. Ian, we got just enough time left here to cover the specialists. I think we're all in agreement. Cam Canada returns as your long snapper, Jordan Berry as the punter, and also the holder for Chris Boswell, who it looks like will retain his job as the place kicker. Your thoughts?
I agree with all that. I don't see anything that Boswell has done to lose his job this preseason. It's been a good competition. They gave Matthew Wright a fair shot. I really wish that Jordan Berry had any competition. I mean, Jordan Berryman's or Ian Berryman. Sorry. Wow, I messed that up. Guy's my own name. Ian Berryman's been all right, but there's just been a couple small things where you notice the difference. Directional punting was one of them in the last or not the last game, the Kansas City game. Berryman tried to pin them along the sideline and punted it out of bounds at the 30-yard line instead of getting it down inside the 20. And that's something that the Steelers really value, is that directional punting ability that Jordan Berry has, despite his lack of leg strength. So, I just think Berry's still got the roster spot.
Yeah, same. And Ben, close it out for us. Any thoughts on the specialists?
No, status quo.
Yeah. Nope, I'm with you. And Steelers will again play tomorrow night, on Thursday, that is, in Carolina. Final preseason game. Dobbs and Rudolph will take care of the first half. And Devlin Duck Hodges will take care of the second half, according to what we've been told. And so hopefully everybody stays healthy, and a lot of good young men are not going to be kept in Steelers uniforms past Saturday, and it's a shame, but that's football. That's the NFL. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you give us a good rating and all that stuff on whatever platform you listen. But for Ben and Ian, this is Steel Dad signing off on the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast, presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And hey, go Steelers.